Christo Chaney from Congregation Shahareth. If you haven't had the opportunity to visit, you should, and stuff like that. So I'm going to invite Christo to come up and deliver the talk.
If memory serves me right, I think this was possibly the second topic that was recommended to me, and I've always said no. And every time somebody asked me, why do you refuse to speak on this subject? It was very simple, because I've never been there before in my life. I don't know what's going on. I don't know any of the people. I've never traveled anywhere near that far in my life before. Well, now that I finally have, I have no more excuses. So I'm getting close to not accepting any more subjects from the UU. Maybe I'll start coming up with my own topics and run it by your board leaders. So as you know, recently I finally took a very long trip to Israel. Last November I was there for 2 weeks. A few days I was there by myself outside of the tour group to explore on my own. And so the best topic I've come up with is Israel and Palestine, the evidence located. I need to be very clear, because even though I am a Jew, that does not mean that I am an Israeli. Not all Jews are Israelis. Not all Israelis are Jews. And even though some Muslims are Palestinians, not all Palestinians are Muslim. Some Palestinians are actually Jews. Some Palestinians are Christians. Some Palestinians are atheists. But all Jews, Muslims, Palestinians, Israelis, Christians, atheists, agnostics, and Unitarian Universalists all are people. Before May 14th, 1948, the entire area that we now call Israel was known as Palestine. It was called Palestine because it was under the British mandate, so it was basically under the thumb of the British monarchy. Before the British mandate of Palestine, it was under the Ottoman Empire, also called Palestine then at the time. Before the Ottoman Empire, it was many others. Going further and further back, for nearly 2,000 years, the land was known as Palestina, the Latin term that was renamed Palestine in English by the ancient Romans when they conquered the Holy Land in about the year 136 CE. But even during the many generations when the land was called Palestine, even the coinage, and you can find these, it says Palestine in Hebrew and Arabic. There's a small little acronym, Aleph Gershayim Yud, and that was an acronym for originally called Land of Israel. This is from one of the last issues of the newspaper called the Palestine Post, when the state of Israel was born. And you can see in about the middle right, it says U.S. recognizes a new Jewish state. This image is easily found online. Today, the Palestine Post is called the Jerusalem Post. It's the same company, same successors of people, originally founded by 2 Palestinian Jews. In a French book from 1924, you can find the flags of many nations from 1924. Take a close look at the one for Palestine. It's blue and white. I've got a closer image for you in a moment. If you can't see it very well, and if it's not showing up on the live broadcast, there's what the flag of Palestine used to look like before 1948. Here's what the flag of Palestine looks like today. I was in an ancient city called Hebron. This building is called the Tomb of the Patriarchs. It is where Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, and Leah are all buried. One matriarch named Rachel is not buried there. She's buried somewhere else. In the top center, you can see an Islamic minaret that is used to call the Muslim call to prayer. And I can't tell if you can see very clearly, but directly to the left of it, you can see a very large Jewish Hanukkah that is used for Hanukkah. This very ancient building on top of the graves of the patriarchs is shared by Jews and Muslims. Some parts of the structure I've been inside. Some parts are used as a synagogue. Other parts are used as a mosque. Hebron is in an area called the West Bank. And even though there's a lot of disagreement, a bit of friction when I was there for about half a day, from what I can tell, they seem to be getting along just fine. But I was only there for about 4 or 5 hours. I had to take screenshots from my phone to prove that yes, not only was I in Israel, I made a trip over to a city called Nablus and some other areas in the West Bank. This is not Israel proper. The West Bank is considered Palestinian territory. As for further evidence, I did show these to my friend Josh, and he says, well, yeah, your phone was there. You were logged in on your phone, but were you really there? I was like, oh, Josh, don't you know me well enough? You've known me how long? Let's see if the audio works.
Right now, I am in Palestine. Yes, I'm in Palestine right now.
So, Josh, do you believe me now?
I believe you.
This is area, and this is the time of the Muslim call to prayer service.
The whole time I was in the West Bank area, known as Palestine, I kept my yarmulke on. I was greeted, friendly, handshakes, hugs. They asked if it was my first time. Numerous people in Palestine hope that I will visit again. I've already put down my deposit for later this year to return. To kind of clean up my late father's explanation of getting accurate sources from the horse's mouth, as opposed to some other animal, just because you see something on a screen or with your own eyes, you might make some incorrect assumptions about it. On the right side, I want to ask all of you a question. Do you think the text on the right in Hebrew, is that a Jewish text? You have no idea. Well, it's in Hebrew. Are you sure?
Nope.
That gal's smart. You haven't peeked, did you? Okay. The one on the left, do you think that is a Muslim text?
Yes. I have no idea.
That's a Muslim text.
Don't know.
Someone says yes. The one on the left, there in Arabic, that is not a Muslim text. It is a translation of the Holiness Code from Leviticus 18. That is an Arabic translation of what I read in my synagogue for the high holidays in the afternoon service. The part where you shall not bear a grudge, you shall not stand idly by while your neighbor bleeds. And it ends with, you shall love your neighbor as you love yourself. The part of the right side, that's in Hebrew, is a modern Hebrew translation of this book here, the Quran. What the Hebrew says, I have it in English, and this translation is from 1938. Oh, that's right. It was part of your chalice lighting. Let there be no compulsion in religion. Truth stands out clear from error. Whoever rejects evil and believes in God has grasped the most trustworthy handhold that never breaks. God hears and knows all things. This translation was by Abdullah Yusuf Ali from 1938. Do not believe everything you see, because in my kitchen, even the salt looks like sugar. In a commentary on this Quran translation, in Surah 17, the Quran never lists the city of Jerusalem by name. It's not in there. It mentions a place called the Farthermost Mosque. And in this commentary by Abdullah Yusuf Ali, he explains it must refer to the site of the Temple of Solomon in Jerusalem on the hill called Moriah, at or near which now stands the Dome of the Rock. It is called the Farthermost Mosque because it was the place of worship farthest west, which was known to the Arabs in the time of Muhammad. It was a very sacred place to both the Jews and Christians, but Christians have had the upper hand, and it was included in the Byzantine Empire, then called Palestine, which maintained a patriarch in Jerusalem. The chief dates in connection with the Jewish temple are: it was finished by Solomon in the year BCE 1004, destroyed by the Babylonians by King Nebuchadnezzar in 586 BCE, rebuilt under Ezra and Nehemiah. You can read this in the Jewish Bible, book of Ezra and Nehemiah, about 515. It was restored, extended by King Herod the Great from 17 BCE until CE 29. It was completely destroyed to the ground by the Emperor Titus in CE 70. From a Muslim scholar dated in 1938, you have a Muslim admitting the evidence that yes, there was a Jewish temple on this very site where I have been. I have also been near Al-Aqsa, as well as very close to the Dome of the Rock. Before I was allowed up onto the Temple Mount, I was informed that since I am a Jew, I cannot pray on the Temple Mount. I could not bring this talit, I could not bring a siddur, a Jewish Bible, none of that. The Muslim security said, if you take your kippah off, I can get you closer to the Dome of the Rock. I took my yarmulke off. It's like, how do I get as close as I can? And not only did they say, it's good to see you, is it your first time? I said, this is my first time here. And this Muslim guard said, hopefully it's not your last. And they said, welcome to Mount Moriah. Directly below the Temple Mount, there are ruins of a structure that have been dated to about the year 70 CE. I have seen these ruins for myself, and I'm not sure if you can tell, but in the lower right, the stone that's shaped a little bit differently, there's a Hebrew inscription, and it says Beit HaMikdash, which is a Hebrew term that was used for the temple sanctuary. While I was in Jerusalem, it was on Shabbat. I've not told anyone this, and it's been very hard to keep this a secret. There was a small boy that was climbing up on some railing. He slipped and fell. Nearby, there were some very, very Orthodox Jews. They did not try to help him. This little boy was with his grandfather and grandmother, elderly. And I said, get the police, he needs help. This Orthodox Jewish man, and remember, he's wearing a talit, it is Shabbat. He's wearing full talit. And what he said, I had never been so angry at somebody in my entire life. This Jewish man said, so, just one less terrorist to kill us later. I pushed him back as hard as I could. And without thinking, I jumped over the rail to climb down to reach this child. He was 5, maybe 6 years old. But apparently he did not understand English. And I don't understand Arabic. So I thought, how in the world am I going to get his attention? I'm reaching down, I can't quite reach him. But I had an idea suddenly. I had my phone, and even though it had no cell service, and there was no Wi-Fi, I knew that he would recognize something if I played it for him in a language that he could understand. To get him to trust me, to reach out and grab my hand, I played this.
الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
That was the first surah of the Qur'an. And in English it says, in the name of God, most gracious and most merciful. Praise be to God, the cherisher and sustainer of the worlds. Most gracious, most merciful. You do we worship, and your aid we seek. Show us the proper way, the way of those on whom you have bestowed your grace, those whose portion is not wrath, and who do not go astray. This boy's grandparents were so grateful to me. They wanted to invite me into their home on Monday. The problem was my flight back to the U.S. was Sunday night. Some Orthodox Jews had gathered, and they saw me get this child up back over the railing to safety. Their Orthodox beliefs say you cannot do any work on the Sabbath. But there is a loophole. If anyone's life is in clear danger on the Sabbath, Jewish text, the Talmud especially, is very clear. You suspend all Sabbath restrictions to save a human life. And they were following me. The Orthodox Jews were following me. And I showed them these very stones. So do you see these stones here this day? Do you know where they're from? And they said, yes, our enemies destroyed our temple in 70 CE. And I said, you have prevented our temple from being rebuilt this very day. And one of them said to me in Hebrew, Ata lo da'ati, you are not Orthodox. And I said to him in clear Hebrew, Ken Baruch Hashem, bye. Which means yes, thank God, bye. From Professor Jacob Newsom's translation of the Jerusalem Talmud. We have found that the first temple was destroyed only because they worshipped idols, they practiced fornication, and they committed murder. And so in the case of the second temple. Rabbi Yochanan, son of Torta, replied, on what account was Shiloh destroyed? Shiloh is the site where the ancient tabernacle was before the temple was built. He said, because of the degradation of the holidays and disgraceful disposition of sacred objects which were there. For Jerusalem's first temple, on what account was it destroyed? Because of idol worship and bloodshed, which was in it. But as to the second temple, we note they devoted themselves to the Torah. They were meticulous in paying tithes. On what account did they go into exile the second time? Because they loved money more than people and they hated others without reason. The first generation of the first temple's destruction returned after 70 years because they repented of their sins. They repaired the harm that they had done, and they rebuilt the temple again. The second generation of the second temple's destruction never rebuilt Jerusalem's grand temple because that second generation never repented of their baseless hatred for others. Maybe Jerusalem's third temple can only be constructed out of the baseless acceptance of other people who are different from us because of the inherent worth and dignity of every person, whether Israeli, Palestinian, Muslim, Jewish, atheist, Unitarian Universalist, whatever else. Maybe only by the baseless acceptance of others will Jerusalem ever have a temple again in the future. From the Babylonian Talmud, Shabbat 133b. Mahu rachum af atah rachum. Just as he, meaning God, is merciful, so should you also be merciful. When someone once told me that I already know what your position is on the Jewish state, I asked him, are you sure you know what my position is? You might be wrong. People often ask me, how do you solve the conflict over there? There's two videos that I would like you to look up. They're both on YouTube. The first one is Two Faiths and One Prayer. It shows Muslims and Jews in the United States getting along perfectly, praying together numerous times. The other one is an episode of Middle Ground about Israelis and Palestinians having a conversation in Jerusalem. Despite their disagreement and a lot of harsh words, they shared a meal together. And even though it's not in the recording, I'm sure the discussion continued afterwards. The Union of Reform Judaism, of which my synagogue is presently a member, has been very insistent from the very beginning that a two-state solution is the only option. Reform Judaism, and to the same extent the conservative movement of Judaism, has been very insistent that our greatest hope is for two people, Israelis and Palestinians, to live side by side together in peace and safety for both of them. If we're going to kick out the Palestinians, then shouldn't all of us be kicked out of Texas and should it be returned back to Mexico? Or do we go back further than that? Do we keep Mexico from having Texas and do we simply restore it back to the Native American descendants, what few are still left today? If I were to demand that all Palestinians leave the Holy Land and go somewhere else, then I need to put my money where my mouth is and pack my bags. And I need to go back to either Ireland or the United Kingdom, because that's where my ancestry is from. I'm going to finish with this. Is the source true? We see so much misinformation being shared online. Sometimes the headlines are catchy. They grab our attention. But are they true? Consider the source very carefully. If you see a claim from abcnews.com.co, don't trust it. That is not the true domain of ABC News. Always read past the headline. If a provocative headline drew your attention, read a bit further before you decide to pass along the shocking information, because the shocking information may be false. Even in legitimate news stories, The headline will not always tell you the whole story. Another thing to consider, who is the author? If you see something that is written by, and it simply says the American people, how can you really trust it if you don't have a name of the person who typed up the article? Be sure the email is not from a Yahoo, Gmail account, or even, I have seen this recently, I can't believe this website is still up and running, Excite.com. That was before Yahoo. I had an Excite account. It's still active. I haven't used it 16 years. But if it's from Excite.com or Gmail.com, really? You're going to trust somebody with an email address like that to show you a news source? Be careful with the dates as well, because a lot of false stories aren't completely fake, but they are distortions of real events. Even a claim that something that happened very long ago can be portrayed as something very recent. For example, I had to throw this in there. The world's largest ocean liner ever built did not sink recently. That was back in 1912. Yeah, the RMS Titanic. That was a while back. That's not recent. If you see an image of an Israeli soldier pointing an assault rifle at the head of a Palestinian child, pause for a minute and Google search some images of the actual Israeli uniform and see if they match. If the uniform doesn't match, you can do a Google search of the actual image and find other sources. MSNBC? Fox News, maybe? No, I don't know Fox. And see where the Google image has been used previously and what the other sources are saying. Are any of the sources reporting on the same story, or is it from one source that no one's talking about? There is more that I have to say, but I think I'll save that for another time. We are past 12 noon, but I'm fine taking some questions. If you need to close the service, I will stay afterwards and answer any questions that people have. But it's your call, Josh. Do you want to close the service, or should we run it for a little bit? What do you want to do?
Oh, I think we talked about this earlier. Yeah, we could close the service, and anybody who needs to leave can head out. And if people have questions for Christo, we can do that.
So my email is up here for anyone who's leaving. And as always, if you want these slides and any of the sources you want, just send me an email, and I'll respond to you very quickly. But I will stay after the service closes to answer any questions that people have. So, First Unitarian Universalist of Lubbock, thank you again for having me back. I have never had a poor experience here, and I doubt that I ever will.
Thank you, Krista. Thank you again. It's always an honor to have you here and to speak to our community. If you don't know this, also have Jewish ancestry. If you look back in the 19th century, and I have a whole bunch of rabbis and stuff in my background. I am not Jewish by religion. I'm actually atheist, but I wore my kippah today so that Christo isn't alone, and also to honor kind of my family history in that, but also to show that the Jewish people and them have a responsibility in the world community, and likewise the world community to Jewish people, but also to extend and to honor. I've known some, my ex-wife was half Ethiopian, half Swiss, and the Ethiopians have a Jewish connection they believe Solomon and the Queen of Sheba their lineage kind of extends to them. They have a whole narrative behind that. But in the 13th century, kind of when the Ottoman Empire first started pushing out other types of Muslims and stuff from Palestine at that time. Muslims, Jewish people escaped into Africa, into northern Africa, and into Ethiopia. And the Ethiopian Orthodox, which is a Christian religion in Ethiopia, opened their doors to Jews and Muslims and their communities. Now there's the communities of both Jewish and Muslims who celebrate each other's festivals and are related by family and stuff. And they're very interesting. It's fascinating to see them in such unity and stuff like that. So, our closing words are from the Dalai Lama. Our prime purpose in this life is to help others. And if you can't help them, at least don't hurt them. All right, if somebody will carry the flame.
Carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again. Carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again.
A good week, a week of peace. May gladness reign, and may all your joys only increase. Shavua Tov Me'od.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Crystal will be open for questions if you would like to talk to him as well.